Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Hey, welcome to another episode of The Disruption Is Now, the podcast where we talk about all things AI and how it's impacting human communications. I'm Greg Matusky, your host, but I'm also the CEO of Gregory FCA. We're a PR firm here in the States with offices in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and now in London with an acquisition. We have a financial services office in London. I'm really excited about today's show. I met Darryl Sparey at Hard Numbers a couple months ago, and I was very impressed with what he's doing in the realm of public relations and how he comes at it completely different, I think, than the way that we come at it. And it was intriguing to me, but also we both share a love of the intrigue of AI and the transformational impact it'll have on human communication. So, Darryl, welcome to the podcast. And did I get that right? You at Hard Numbers in London?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was possibly the nicest introduction I've had in some time, Greg. So really, really appreciate it.
Well, you know, you have a unique podcast of your own, which I was on, which looks at the failures of campaigns and PR, which I just found immensely entertaining, because all we ever do is brag about our successes. So your podcast, which dealt with the fuck-ups of past PR campaigns, I got to give you a lot of credit for being out there and advancing it.
I always say failure is a much better teacher than success. So I think that's I couldn't agree with you more there.
This is true. I always tell my kids, you know, I have failed more than I've succeeded. The only thing is I never consider it failure. So just move on, right?
I never lose. I just learn a lesson, right?
I just learned a lesson.
There you go.
And we learned a lesson recently, didn't we? With something we pitched and did not win. Yeah. But I think it was due to my lack of charisma that failed us on that, and certainly had nothing to do with Darryl and Hard Numbers. So,
Greg,
anyway.
you got charisma for days. If there was anything the pitch lacked, it definitely wasn't charisma.
well, tell me a little bit, because you come at this whole game in a different way. You know, ours here in the States, our DNA is media relations first and foremost.
Yeah.
And what I learned from you, Darryl, is that you certainly have a big initiative and a big skill set in media relations, but also you're an expert on how it impacts lead generation and the programs you can do. You're an expert on SEO and the power of PR to support those efforts. And then also an expert in reporting and monitoring, which is something all of us grapple with as PR professionals.
Yeah.
And we can never have enough information on that. But tell me, in those realms, where do you think AI will play a role in how the industry is transformed?
Okay, so I don't want to correct you, but I would say I'm an enthusiast more than I'm an expert. I think expert is something I would never self-describe as. I'm delighted that you describe me as that. But
well, you know what's great about AI?
Yeah.
Everyone's an expert, because no one knows where it's going. No one knows where it's going. You could say right now it's going to be the ruination of mankind or womankind as we know it, and I'd have to agree with you. Or you could say it's going to cure cancer, and I would have to agree with you.
Yeah.
So we do not know.
Absolutely. Okay, so in all of those areas that you talked about, I think AI can have an enormous impact on what's happening. And I think we're only really scratching the surface of any one of these things at the moment. I think it's in part because some of the adoption of AI is being driven by the very, very big tech, players, your Microsoft Copilots, your, OpenAI, obviously, with ChatGPT, but they obviously have a relationship with Microsoft, and it's getting baked into all of their products. And more and more, Microsoft have nailed this Copilot branding. More and more tools that I use are introducing AI co-pilots now within their within their stack. So at the moment,
tell me about that. Tell me about that, because I'm a big Chat GPT, and part of it could just be legacy. You know, like that's what I learned to ride the bike on.
Yeah.
So that's what I always go back to.
Yeah.
So where are you seeing Copilot making inroads?
Oh, I mean, with a lot of the big, the big ticket communications businesses, so utilities and things like that. You know, there are in the UK a number of big tier one communications companies that are giving licenses to a number of their staff, if not all of their staff, you know, across the piece. I listened to advertising from, I think it was one of the big four, you know, consulting businesses recently that boasted of the fact that all of their team had AI-enabled tools to help them do their work and things like that. So you're definitely seeing it, that sort of bigger company, they're writing the checks to put these tools in the hands of their staff and then saying, use it and see what happens. And to an extent...
And then it really... then the challenge is change management, right? You can give out the tools all you want, but are people using it? Are they using it effectively? And when I say effectively, I mean increased productivity and higher quality work product. That's the real key.
Yeah, 100%. I think the to your point, one of the things when we started, we set up an AI steering group at Hard Numbers of people that we wanted to, who had an interest or enthusiasm for either learning new technologies or using tools or things like that. And one of the first things we worked on collectively was an AI policy for the business. And we felt that was really important because we needed to give all of our staff a license to operate and use it, and to know what the do's were, and also to know what the don'ts were, so that they could then, with confidence, play around with, these technologies and find their own hacks, shortcuts, quicker ways of doing things that they can then come back and report to the wider steering group, and then we can look to potentially roll those out.
Well, you bring up a good term. I always say, play with it, play with it, play with it. And by that, I mean, when people sit down to it, they tend to look at it because all software had been coded in the past as some technical endeavor, and it's really not. I mean, I think we as storytellers and communicators hold the key to the kingdom because we've spent our whole lives riffing, right? Either writing something or creating something or storytelling or telling other people, helping other people do the same. Yeah. So, and as a part of that too, Darryl, I think we're more flexible thinkers, which gives us a big advantage in the process. I had somebody on the podcast, I can't remember who brought this up, but anything pre-Chat GPT, everybody that was involved in AI were technical minds, right? Yeah. And so they were looking for consistency because that's what software does. 2 + 2 = 4. And then post GPT, you enter this weird and wonderful world where you could have 10 content creators all create a piece of content on the same subject, all very different, but all of value. So we're very conditioned to having a great deal of variation in leads, storytelling, effect. And that's been a real advantage, I think, in PR that we could adapt a little bit quicker than other industries. I don't know, your thoughts?
I really like that. And I like your formulation of play with this stuff and see what happens, right? There's because if you make it feel like work, there's that old Edison quote, opportunity is missed by most people because it comes dressed in overalls and it looks like work, right? So if you make
Say that again, slow down, say that again.
Opportunity is missed by most people because it comes dressed in overalls and it looks like work. And I think if you make something feel fun, it's we have one of like a values doc or whatever that we train everyone when they or we take everyone through when they join Hard Numbers, and one of them is find the fun. right? Find the fun in what you do, because you can find yourself sometimes doing repetitive tasks in, PR or whatever. So in a pre-AI world, to help you get through very repetitive, often either manual or very like data-oriented tasks, I'd say find the fun in it. If you've got to go through a list of 3,000 names, identifying who were the MQLs versus the SQLs versus the people who didn't engage or whatever, how many Daves are in the list versus how many Davinas or whatever, like find something interesting about it. In the post AI world, the challenge should always be, and the fun you should be finding in stuff is, how can I automate this? How can I build myself a custom GPT to do this for me? Or how can I come up with a process or something that basically, if I find myself doing a boring routine task, that I'm like, this feels a lot like effort.
Let's go through your services, your service stack on that very issue, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with SEO, and where is it impacting that? Taking the tedium out of it, but also having greater impact for clients, do you think?
I think the key thing on the SEO side of things is not content creation, because Google is definitely, hot on that, but it is great for just suggesting ideas and thought starters for content. Whenever I think I've got to do something and I'm like, give me, imagine your insert role, insert company, insert, thing here. Give me 10 things you should think about in relation to X topic or whatever, right? Or 10 considerations in relation to, ABC or whatever. And 7 of them that it spits me back I'll have thought of, but 3 of them I won't. And it gives you a great kind of thought starters for that kind of stuff, or inspirations to then go and write, posts about those particular topics, things like that. I think the other way where AI is impacting SEO is on the other side of that whole trade, right? It is Google, in particular, and Bing to a lesser extent, and other tools in the stack using AI on their side of things to better identify, poor quality content, to better target, advertising to improve their search results, etc., etc. So those are the areas in which AI is impacting SEO and digital marketing more broadly, I think.
And what do you think the impact is going to be on Google losing more and more traffic, search traffic to AI? How will that change the game in SEO?
Yeah, there's a really interesting new service development that I'm seeing popping up from a few different providers of basically model optimization. So basically optimizing your content to be picked up in the large language models and things like that, so that you're then included when someone asks a question about a topic that's in relation to your product or service or business or whatever. So I think that is going to be a trend which will continue over time. And look, Google share price has been a roller coaster. I can say that as someone who owns a little bit of Google stock over the course of the past 18 months, 2 years. And the big thing driving that is any time there's been, big announcements about products in relation to AI, either on their side and it's not gone that well, or, on the competitor side of things or whatever, they've all had an impact. So I think
they really are caught between, it's the innovator's dilemma, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you stay with that cash cow that has always been the great producer of revenue, which is obviously advertising in Google's case, or do you embrace the new and have to cannibalize some of that revenue? And certainly I think their delay and slowness in embracing it really has put them into a situation that has allowed AI to emerge without Google's imprint so far. So it'll be interesting to me. I mean, Perplexity, that search engine, brings up a lot of interesting alternatives that are out there. I think Google search has been broken for a long time. And I think we'll look back in 5 years and say a couple things. I think we'll say, first of all, can you believe we would put up with a search where the first 5 hits were just revenue opportunities for Google? How crazy were we back then?
Yeah.
Can you believe that we would have to piece together research from various websites that Google would surface, and we'd have to copy them to a document to remember what it was saying, and it didn't come in a nice bow and a nice package as a narrative? And I mean, the narrative is so powerful when it comes to you, and it really does allow you almost to become an instant expert in any subject, things that you would have to piece together with Google on Perplexity or OpenAI, which I do not use as a search engine because I don't think it was built to do that. But certainly people want to use it as a search engine because, again, changing behavior is very difficult. So I'll be interested to see where that leads us in SEO and AEO and platform optimization. Yeah. I do know it'll have real meaning for content, right? I think legitimate research and quotes from reliable sources are going to take on more importance, which they really don't in Google. You know, you still do a search and you end up on Mary Jane's wellness blog somewhere where she's talking about how shishito peppers will make you live to be 120 years old. I mean, so I grow shishito peppers, so that came to mind. But anyway.
but
anyway,
just to quickly develop your point as well, you know, Satya Nadella has openly, I mean, he was obviously very big in Bing, and I think he sees Bing as unfinished business, and he's very openly said, every bit of market share we take off of Google, we can take off them far more cost effectively than they're able to, and we can cause them real pain. I mean, he is bang up, I think, for disrupting Google. And he's got a platform that could potentially do it. So I think you're 100% right.
Let's play a quick game. You ready?
Go on.
I'm going to tell you something that AI does, which drives me crazy, and then you tell me.
Go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In this increasingly complex business world, it seems like every article starts with this very, very vapid language that means nothing to anyone. So that really bugs me, and I've worked hard to erase it from any kind of prompt I write. Now your turn.
It's the number of bullets when you ask it. I mean, it's always this very, very similar number of bullets. So no matter what the question is, no matter what the prompt you write, no matter what all the rest of it, unless you're very specific about the number of points you want back, it's quite repetitive in terms of the number of bullets it basically returned to stuff. I mean, that's something that I've definitely experienced firsthand.
I'll give you another one, which I learned in my first year out of college. Never conclude your writing with "in conclusion" or a headline or a subhead that says conclusion. No one does that. I don't understand why AI does that. There must be a ton of bad writing in the training materials, but that one drives me absolutely nuts.
Are there any other things that you found really challenging or difficult about the AI side of things?
Well, certainly the use of these words, delve is now, I guess, a brand new word in the English dictionary. Game changing, right? Certainly the reliance, it's not so much on cliches, it's certain words that always uses and surfaces, which gives you the immediate idea this is machine written.
Absolutely. That's really interesting, actually. It's kind of like you've got to maybe view yourself as a sub-editor for this content, right? And basically what it's giving you is an initial kind of first pass on something, and then you can spend your time smithing and working and all the rest of it on things thereafter.
The other thing that I see people do all the time is they over-engineer the prompt, right? They tell they tell the machine to do too much. I find yesterday I just needed to do something quickly, and literally I came up with 2 sentences, and it did very well. And I got to the end of the 2 sentences, and I said, let me just try to see what it would come up with this. And sometimes I will doom my own future by trying to over engineer it and with too much tedium in it. So it's really important to give it facts. But if I try to make it do too much, right? I'll give you an example. I recently got an assignment from a client. They'd gone to a huge agency and did a crisis playbook, which is just full of puffery. And obviously somebody was being paid on an hourly basis. And they asked me to redo it, right? So I have my own approach to these things and have had pretty good success with a formula that I use. So I fed in what we used against what the other one was. And that was so rich and dense, right, that it just couldn't do it. It couldn't go through it and expunge all the unnecessary, all the ridiculousness. So it really struggled with it. And finally I said, okay, I found something that doesn't do well. The other thing it doesn't do well is it doesn't write media pitches well at all.
No.
I mean, it's just, it's not in the training material, which makes sense because the correspondence with a journalist, with a reporter, with the press is the most protected of all. So it doesn't have access to it. So that's one thing that is the holy grail of every PR tech provider, and no one has really succeeded at it. I don't know, your thoughts on that. Have you tried to do?
Yeah, do you know what? I think there's certain things that, to your point, shouldn't try to, or you should be careful about how you use AI on that side of things. One of the principles that we have, for our team is obviously we would never put anything client sensitive into anything that was like a free to air model or anything like that. We're always very protective of that kind of stuff. One area that we have used very successfully, ChatGPT for is analyzing content, particularly when there's like a lot of content, for clients. Where if we have a client that has a product in a particular category, and we've got a whole load of content, from a Google News search or some kind of online search that we want to either condense down into sort of a short summary of the key things, or summarize each article, or pull out key themes or whatever from the article. We found, that we can use that really, really successfully. So analyzing and understanding key themes from a lot of specific content, we find that works particularly well. The other thing is, understanding topic areas that are going to be of interest to specific journalists or whatever from things that have been written. Again, if there's a particular journalist and you've got a number of pieces of content that they've written, very quickly being able to understand how many times they've written about AI, or they've written about, point of sale software, or, whatever the topic is. If you've got the content, it can do that really, really quickly, which is really helpful in terms of creating very tailored pitches, because you can say, I know you've written about this topic area a lot, and, you wrote this as a particularly, interesting theme, and here's something that our client's working on that's particularly relevant to you in that area.
Hey, let's go into the research you just finished. I saw on your website with regard to the number of companies that are emerging with the name AI embedded in it. So what were your findings there, Darryl?
Basically, it's not going to surprise anyone in the UK that there's a huge number of companies with AI in their company name that have been founded over the period of time that we looked at, particularly in London. That was the kind of key thing. But what we definitely saw was this huge uptick, in huge increase over in a short space of time in the number of companies that were founded that had AI in their company name. And the big driver for that is obviously investment, right? because they're seeing all these investor dollars chasing businesses that are in the AI space. And one of the quickest and easiest ways to demonstrate that you are in some way or another in the AI space is to have it in your company name and to have a .ai website. So, we found that what was interesting is it more or less mirrored kind of population density in terms of Manchester, for example, being a hotbed of AI startups outside of kind of central London.
It's interesting with startups. It's such a wicked world. If you look back over the last 18 months and where we were 18 months ago with startups, and how AI is kind of like a steamroller because it performs many of the functions the original startups were started to achieve, right? And I often wonder with prompting if that's where we're going. If a year from now we will not have to prompt, that it'll understand us so well that we won't even have to prime it. We won't even have to, it will have a memory of what we've worked on in the past, and we'll just have to give it a couple cues and we'll be able to recreate it. I go back to a product we built in March of 2023 to help write releases. It was a skin of OpenAI, and it was very templated, Darryl. So you could go on, there's 70 different flavors, and it'll walk you through. Is this about an investment? Is this about a new headquarters? Is this about appointment of a CEO? And then it asks all the questions that you would need to answer to write a compelling press release, right? If it was a new CEO, where did they come from? What happened to the past CEO? How are we determining the transition? What does this mean to the corporate vision, right? And those prompts were very effective. Now I see people sit down before it, and they know the game, and they don't have to rely on a templatized prompt. It's kind of like Jasper, right?
Yeah.
Jasper was an early entry, and they thought everything would be needed to be templated, including your social media, including content, and it sort of doesn't. So I'll be interested to see where it goes. Give me a call. Right? If I'm talking to the Darryl in 2025, at the end of 2025, how has our world changed?
Yeah, do you know what? I think there's a few key things. One, I think you're going to see a lot of PR agencies launch or talk about products in relation to AI, and a lot of them are going to be like vaporware or non-existent or things like that. So there's going to be a lot of chat. So cutting through the noise and identifying what's real and applied AI thinking and things like that, and what is really just we've bought everyone licenses to ChatGPT or whatever.
Right.
I think that's kind of one thing. I think it'll be interesting. I think there are potentially more agencies that could launch with less people. I think there's that graph on like the number of employees that it takes per $100,000 of I think it's $1 million of revenue actually, and over time it's just gone down and down and down and down. And I think a trend that you're seeing in startups more generally that I think there could definitely be a read across into PR is that agencies need, the new agencies that start with a completely clean slate, and have the opportunity to develop a specific service model in relation to this and the pricing structure and everything else that reflects this, have an opportunity to have, significantly less staff to service the revenue than you might have.
That's interesting. I mean, that's what we see with startups today, right? We see that startup companies need significantly less investment and significantly fewer people to create a marketable product, and that's because of all the tools that are available up until ChatGPT, but also now with OpenAI. I mean, people can become coders who were never coders, and if you are starting an agency and you're doing it from scratch, but I still think there's big hopes for big futures for individuals like you and I, because we're more nimble than the big players, right? we're super creators in our own right. You've been there so long, I've been in the game so long that we know where the message is going. So we can get it right first out of the box, out of the starting blocks, and then create so many derivations of it. So if you do it right the first time, if you give a great, great CEO speech, and it's right the first time, all of a sudden the news release writes itself. The PowerPoint content writes itself. The cascade of communication writes itself. And you can become this super creator, which will be much more productive. But I see people on the inside there'll be fewer people on the inside too. And that will provide opportunity for us to continue like the cockroaches we are to emerge after the nuclear explosion and continue on. So anyway, Darryl, I'm looking forward. I'm going to see you in late August in London. Looking forward to sitting down with you and sharing maybe an adult beverage and learning more about what you're up to. Really respect the job that you've done on that side of the pond and all that you've done to market yourself, but also all that you've done to advance public relations in the way of monitoring and reporting and merging with SEO and lead generation. You should receive a lot of credit for that. So I thank you for your contribution.
Thank you so much, Greg. I really appreciate the time. I very much look forward to a nice cold beer with you in August. And thanks so much.
I thought you drank it warm. I thought the Brits drank it warm. But I'll take you up on that, and you'll be buying. All right?
Okay, yeah, done. Right. Thank you very much.
Take care, Darryl. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.